Good morning, everyone. Today's date is the 16th of December and the time is 20 to 9. Apologies for not having done the podcast for last week. It was a very loaded week for me last week, and I think if anybody listens to these on a regular basis will know I am interested in the politics of the world and what goes on in a sort of bigger sense, not just the personal sense when it comes to astrology and everything else in my life. And obviously we had an election last week in this country, which left obviously the majority of people who voted for it very happy. But for those of us who didn't, there definitely seems to be a sense of despair going on. And a lot of people feeling that the world is going to hell in a handcart and that things are looking quite gloomy for the next few years. So that full moon in Gemini certainly brought up a lot of things, and I know a lot of my friends and myself were feeling very sad on Friday and just shaken really at how many people in the world don't share the things that we share, which they're entitled to do, and I'm not saying that that they're not, and I would not want to question anybody who believes in those things if that's what they believe in, and that's perfectly fine. But I didn't want to influence things when I was talking about the astrology of last week, and also feeling very nervous about the whole thing anyway, so that's why I took a week out to not do that. So where does that leave us for this week? Well, yesterday was an interesting one, and I think it kind of comes off the back of what happened, because we had Jupiter trine to Uranus, and that to me was a very positive and important aspect, and I certainly began to see things in the things that people were putting out in social media, that yes, things weren't what we wanted them to be, and what we were hoping for, but people are already beginning to think and look forward and to look at how we can change things and what we can do to make sure that we look after everybody in the coming months and years, and that the values of caring for others, particularly those less fortunate in the world, continue, and that we do as much as we can to protect those people and to have those values of love and caring and humanity around us, and to be accepting and inclusive. So I think that aspect certainly brings that home. There will be a lot of themes next year around Uranus and Aquarius and things moving forward, as well as the last dregs of things looking backward. And there are people who want to stay where they are and in the past and have those values. But we're seeing glimpses now, and this week we will see some glimpses again of where we are looking forward, and to looking at what we can do to change the world for the better, and to look at the things, the crises that are affecting us, the bigger planetary issues which Uranus and Taurus is highlighting, and what we can do about those things. So Jupiter trine Uranus, I think, is a lovely, hopeful aspect to say that, well, things aren't maybe the way we would like them to be. The better future is out there, and we have to work towards that. Jupiter in Capricorn says, think long term. Think about what you can lay down now that might not see the benefit of straight away, but will see the benefit of in the future. And that's what Uranus as well looks to. People with a strong Uranian aspect in their chart appear to be sometimes living in a different realm to the one that we're living in, and it's only when we look backwards we can see that actually they were right, and that the things that they were talking about and they were pointing towards were true, and we were just maybe not ready for them. And that's true of a lot of people, say, who have that kind of Uranian view, is that they can see things that we can't, and it might all seem a bit odd and a bit weird at the time, but when you look back, you can actually see where they're taking us. And those people are very brave and, you know, do go against what the traditional society may dictate, but, you know, they are, you know, blazing the trail for the rest of us to follow in years to come. So that's what his piece is all about, and we'll see that again reflected through 2020 as we see the glimpses of the future beginning to show, those seeds of hope beginning to show about where we're going and the things we can do, the possibilities for that future. So the next aspect I would like to move on to is on the 19th of December, which is Thursday. And it is probably, for most people, the last proper working day. You can discount Friday, because Friday most people are, their heads are elsewhere, wanting to be off into the holidays. I know a lot of people have a half day on Friday. We call this Mad Friday where we live. It's kind of like everybody finishing work and getting ready for the party season and wanting to just kick back and not think about things for a couple of weeks. So Thursday, when you've got Mars sextile Saturn, is a really, really good day to get things done. I really like that aspect. Mars in Scorpio, which is a very strong, determined sign for Mars to be in, Mars' own sign. Then sextile in Saturn in Capricorn, which again, very practical, very earthy. So if you want to get things done, get them done on Thursday. That energy will be there, that willingness to get things done. And I think also because it's again about making sure that you're making plans for the new year. If you want to make sure that everything's in place for you when you get back and hit the ground running, get those done on Thursday. Make sure that you're getting everything, you get your calendar sorted out for January, making sure you've got those meetings in place so that you know, say once you've had your break, you can just get back to things and make sure everything's in place the way you want them to be. So I really like that aspect for Thursday, is the kind of getting things done day. You know, you can be, if you get those things into place, you can feel satisfied then on Thursday evening. So that, you know, on Friday, maybe you can kick back a little as you finish off those final bits for the end of the week and probably the end of the year for a lot of people who take those 2 weeks off for the Christmas period. So the other thing about the Friday, the 20th, is that unlike the day before where it's lovely and productive and gets things done, on the Friday you have got Mercury square to Neptune, so everything is a little bit foggy, and that could just be people's heads are elsewhere. It could also be that there's people are trying to sort out plans and things not coming together as well. And also watch out for transport on the Friday as well. If you are planning to travel on the Friday, make sure that you've got everything down to the last detail. Leave extra time, because Neptune loves to fog things up and cause you difficulties along the way. The other thing about Mercury Neptune is about people saying things maybe that they don't really mean. I'm just going to go to my notes for this, because you say, put my glasses on as well. It's about confusing conversation. It can feel a bit like breaking point, you know, that you're trying to get things done and that your brain is not quite there and maybe saying things that you don't really want to say. And I think as well, with Neptune being involved and the notorious Mad Friday going on, it could be that you might start off the celebrations with all the best intentions and be friendly and nice, but then it could get into something less pleasant by the end of the evening. Have you looked at my pint the wrong way? That kind of thing. So be careful of that, saying things that you don't mean. If you've got things to say, wait till a different day to say them, or if you feel like you're not in the mood, get yourself home rather than cause problems for yourself by ending up in arguments that you don't really need to be ending up in. As I'd say, it feels as well like a kind of if, and again, this sort of leads into a lot of the things that are happening. It's almost like the end of the old and the beginning of the new, but the new's not quite there yet. But there's that kind of dissatisfaction with things that comes with the Mercury Neptune square, that maybe you don't know quite what's eating you at the moment. Maybe you can't even vocalize because Mercury can't say properly when Mercury is square to Neptune. That you just know that something's not quite right anymore, that you just want things to be different, but you're not really sure why or how that's going to be different. And that theme continues sort of over the holiday period as well. And next week is when we get into the eclipses and what's going on there. And obviously into January with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which we've got to look forward to. It's kind of like there's change coming, there's crisis coming. But at the moment we're not quite there yet, so there's just kind of a feeling about things that that say maybe the way that you've done your celebrations in the past, the people that you've spent them with, how you've spent them, you just don't want to do that anymore. And I think when we move on to looking at the sort of stuff around Venus square Uranus, which happens on the 22nd, you can definitely see that there about, what you value and what you appreciate is changing, and that you don't want to go down those kind of roads anymore. But we'll come to that in a minute. For the time being, like I say, Friday, just be careful, like I say, of saying things that you don't mean because you're not quite sure what's ailing you, in effect. Try to get things done on the Thursday when it comes to work, and then so you can kick back a little on the Friday. So to avoid making wrong decisions and saying things that, or even committing to things that you can't really commit to. So that then takes us on to the Sun moving into Capricorn on the 20th, and this is the start of the pile-up, in effect, of everything that's going to be happening in Capricorn. It is the solstice on the 21st, so the shortest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. It's the darkest time, and it can certainly feel that way, although we do have celebrations here that bring people together, and that there is stuff to celebrate. But for a lot of people, it can be a dark time, a lonely time. It can highlight as much what we don't have as what we have. Excuse me. Let me just take a quick sip of my coffee. One thing about this time of year as well, it brings in lots of nice bugs. That's better. So the idea of the celebration was to bring the light into the darkness, to remind ourselves that even though the day is at its shortest, that the axis of the world turns and that we start to move into the light. So even though, it can feel like sometimes quite a dark time in many ways, there is hope for the future, and that is what we are celebrating. We are celebrating the idea that this is the bottom, this is the nadir of the year, and things can only look up from here. So that's what we can hope for. And to bring that kind of light into your life, this is where people used to burn Yule logs and to light candles, and to show that there is light in the darkness, and we can all have some happiness together. Let me look at the other things I've written down here. So the other thing that Capricorn brings, and I think that, obviously Jupiter and Capricorn this year, Saturn and Pluto there, it's there's almost, even though we're kicking back for the holidays, there is a sense of you can't completely disengage from your responsibilities. And that's what's different about this year with that heavy emphasis on Capricorn, is that, you know, all the jolly Jupiter stuff of Jupiter in Sag has gone now. You know, it's the lightness, the brightness, the go for it, the kind of, yeah, what the hell, that kind of feel has gone from our lives for the present time. And you know, the sort of Capricorn season reminds us that you know, we have to be a little bit more Scrooge like. That we have to contract and restrict and keep an eye on at what we have a duty towards, and the fact that even within these celebratory times, we have a responsibility as well as, you know, the idea of enjoyment. And it does feel different. It does feel different this year as well, with the idea that with the Uranus and Taurus stuff always being in the background, the idea of that kind of huge consumption that we've done in the past, that kind of does not feel right anymore. And a lot of people now are looking to, instead of buying lots of things, to buying things that have value. There's things that, you know, where you know where the provenance is, that you are buying ethically and responsibly. And I say this idea of duty being there. You know, things like, you know, you reusing old wrapping paper, using things that you can use again. You know, instead of buying 10 of something, just buying one. You know, in terms of the food we eat, you know, are we getting things that are sourced responsibly? You know, if you do eat meat, is it coming from a decent source? Do we really need all this food at Christmas, or should we actually be cutting back on what we have because we don't really need it that much? So this idea of the sort of sun moving into Capricorn reminds us that we do have a responsibility, as well as we do have, you know, this idea of enjoyment as well with the what comes for the time of year. As well, the thing that I've put down here is that it is a time for reflection as well, because obviously people aren't at work, they've got a lot of time at home, particularly if you do live in the Northern Hemisphere, because of the weather. And so it is a time to think about what's happened in the year, people reflecting on what's past, where they would like to be in the future. And Janus, who is the god of January, and obviously that's our next month, and it's Capricorn month, looks back and looks forward. So this idea that we're taking the wisdom from the past and using it to inform our future. And if you look at the symbol of the goat, the goat at the moment has the goat we see Capricorn is the mountain goat, the one that sort of, you know, is a very much of this world. But originally it was a goat that had a vicious tail. It had a kind of mystical element to it, and we've kind of lost that, which is a shame that we've lost that kind of side of Capricorn, because we do tend to think of it very much as being real and earthy and no nonsense and no kind of frills or dreaminess about it at all. But if you think of it in terms of the mystical goat creature, it is this idea of ancient wisdom and this idea of listening to the old stories and the myths of the past and what they can teach us and what they tell us about our world and what they tell us about how we treat others. So it's harking back to not just the recent past, but like the ancient past. So thinking about, you know, how we used to live our lives and what we can learn from that going forward. I would also say as well, in the spirit of Capricorn and Christmas, you know, say for a lot of people it can feel a very lonely and sad time. particularly if you don't have family, if you have very little. So it is important to give as much as your time and your resources to those people as well, and to be thankful and to share your thanks and your goodwill with as many as you possibly can, so that everybody can try and have something that is good. And that doesn't necessarily mean massive consumerism. The biggest gift you give people is your time and your resources as a human. So if you don't have a lot, you can always give that. So moving on, 22nd of December, we see Venus square into Uranus, and that is the Sunday before Christmas. And again, I really like this aspect because it is a future and forward-looking aspect, and shows us that little bit of a glimpse of the future when things can look quite dark. And we're going to have quite a lot of trying times in 2020, and I think these glimmers of hope we've got to hold on to very much. And this is one of them. Venus square Uranus is saying about breaking with the way that you do things or have done things in the past. And we've talked about Uranus and Taurus a lot, being this kind of beacon of ethics and how we look after our planet and how we care about our environment. And Venus square into that is saying, look at what you value. Does that align with those kind of things, those kind of values? Do things need to change? Do your personal relationships need to change? Do you need to shake those up a little bit? Just because you've always done things one way doesn't mean to say that you should always do them that way. So we might find on that kind of Sunday this idea of people, some people, particularly those with a strong Uranian bent, and those people who are more forward thinking might wanted to say, okay, so let's not do things that way anymore. Let us have a smaller celebration. Let us recycle things. Let us care about our food and our carbon footprint and all those kind of things. To say that in the future we're not going to be as extravagant, unnecessarily extravagant, as we used to be. In terms of your relationships with others, do they give you value? Do they give you that kind of spiritual comfort as well as the material comfort? Do you stay with people just because that feels safe, rather than being something that's what you really feel and what's the sort of your ideals? So there might be a bit of that going on as well. So I think that you will see that sort of on the Sunday, but then it definitely sort of after that you'll be back to the Capricorn vibe for a little bit longer. So I say hold on to these little glimpses and see where even if you're not acting them out yet, see where your thoughts are going, see what is ringing a bell with you, what is your striking a chord with where you feel like you should be for next year. What do you want for 2020 and the next decade? Because it will be a new decade. Where do you want yourself to be? Do you want more of the same? Do you want things to continue as they are now? Or do you really want something different out of this? And that could be on a personal level, it could be on a family level, it could be on a work level, on a community level, on a national level, on an international level. It is all aspects of that, and it's where you fit in with that, and what can you do, no matter how small, to make your future self happy, and to look to where we should be as on an individual level, on a societal level as well. So as we go into the festive season, and say a lot of heavy duty Capricornian energy that will shake things up, make us look at who we are, what we are as people, and what we value, and then to decide, do we want more of the same? Do we want to hark back, or do we want to move forward in the world and make things different? So I shall leave you on that note. say that's I'm just trying to sort of read my own writing here, see if I've got anything else that I wish to say on that front. Though I think that's just about covered it. So enjoy your last full week at work if that's what's happening for you. Get everything done earlier on in the week, and kick back a little on the Friday if you can, and make sure that anything that you are saying with other people and is what you want from your heart, and if it doesn't ring right, then look at changing those things for the future and seeing if actually this is where you want to be, or if there's something else out there for you. All right, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for listening, and I shall speak to you next week. Bye bye.